Her heels clicked like warning bells on the rain-slick pavement as Everly Quinn sprinted toward the black sedan parked under the glowing city lights, the satin of her wedding dress trailing behind her. She didn't notice the wrong car until the door swung open and a pair of piercing eyes, colder than the winter night itself, locked onto hers. "Now, you are staying forever," a voice murmured, velvet and steel, and in that instant, Everly realized her wedding had ended before it even began. Hey, if you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. It really helps me keep creating content for you. Everly Quinn's life had always teetered on the edge of chaos, but today it felt like the universe had decided to shove her over completely. She clutched the straps of her designer heels and balanced the layers of lace that threatened to swallow her whole. Her wedding had been supposed to be perfect. Every detail meticulously planned, every flower arranged, every vow rehearsed in front of her reflection dozens of times. But here she was late, panicked, and utterly disoriented, standing on the curb of Manhattan, drenched in a drizzle that made the city lights shimmer like liquid gold. "Everly, you're going to ruin everything." Lark Winslow's voice rang sharply from behind her. Lark, her eccentric, fiercely loyal best friend, had somehow managed to appear out of the chaos, her umbrella flipping inside out as she waved it like a flag of surrender. "I told you to leave 15 minutes ago." I know, Everly hissed, ignoring the sting of rain and her frantically tightening nerves. She had one shot at salvation: the car. Her car, her ride to the church. And yet, in the blur of city lights and water-streaked glass, she didn't see the subtle differences. The sleek black sedan gleamed as though freshly polished, its windows reflecting the neon chaos of Times Square. She assumed it was her limo and hurried forward, clutching the bouquet that now seemed more like a shield than a gift. She opened the rear door. The world shifted. Inside, leaning casually against the leather interior, was a man whose presence made her heartbeat stutter. His hair was dark, impeccably styled, his tailored suit flawless, his expression both amused and predatory. The eyes that met hers weren't just sharp, they were arresting, ancient, aware, and somehow knowing. A chill ran up Everly's spine, a shiver that had nothing to do with the rain. "You must be lost," he said softly, his voice a smooth, dangerous purr. "Or perhaps exactly where you're meant to be." Everly froze. The words sounded theatrical, absurd even, but there was an authority behind them that made her knees weaken. I think this is my limo," she stammered, glancing at the familiar signage that wasn't really familiar at all. The man tilted his head, a faint smirk touching his lips. "No, darling, this isn't your ride. But since you've arrived," he let the sentence hang, and something in his tone made the air itself thicken. "Now you are staying forever." Everly yanked her hand back from the door, horrified, and stumbled backward. What do you mean? Who are you?" "I'm Kael Duvall," he said, rising with a grace that seemed almost unreal. Each step toward her was measured, magnetic, a predator moving in his natural habitat. "And you, Everly Quinn, have just walked into my world." Her mind scrambled. Bride, wedding, limo, Kael Duvall, wrong car, wrong everything. But this was beyond any disaster she'd imagined. She tried to shut the door, but the lock clicked in a way that suggested it wasn't her decision anymore. Panic clawed at her chest. Lark, standing behind her umbrella, squeaked. "Everly, are you?" Kael's gaze swept over Lark like a blade passing through mist, and somehow, the best friend went still, sensing the silent authority in his presence. "Step back," he said, and the world seemed to obey him. Everly's breath hitched. She had grown up reading romance novels with dark, mysterious men, but nothing in her imagination had prepared her for this real-life, city-lit nightmare. Yet, as much as fear surged through her, there was a strange magnetism she couldn't deny. Something in Kael's eyes told her he wasn't cruel. Not in the way humans were cruel. He was insistent, dangerous, and unrelenting, and undeniably in control. What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Everything," Kael said simply, the corners of his mouth curling. And perhaps nothing. It depends on you. Everly's brain tried to reject the words as delusion, but her instincts screamed otherwise. The city had become a blur of lights and rain, and she realized, with a sick twist in her stomach, that she had no way out. The world outside felt suddenly distant, irrelevant, powerless. Inside Kael's presence, she was small, human, fragile, and yet strangely alive. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why now?" Kael leaned closer, the scent of his cologne, something woody, ancient, intoxicating, washing over her. "Because," he said, almost tenderly, "you dared to step where others would never dream. You walked into my world, and I noticed." Everly's fingers tightened around her bouquet. Was she dreaming? Was this some bizarre, cruel joke by the universe? And yet, something about the authority in Kael's posture, the undeniable power in his gaze, told her this was real. Terrifyingly real. "You can leave," Kael said suddenly, his tone softening just enough to make her heart clench. "But know this. Once you step back out into the world you've left behind, you may never return. And He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "I don't let people walk away lightly." Everly swallowed hard. The choice was surreal, impossible, and yet urgent. Step inside and risk a life she couldn't imagine, or step back and cling to the ordinary, mundane world she had always known. Her wedding, her family, her life as she understood it, gone a heartbeat. "You," she began, but Kael interrupted with a tilt of his head, his smirk playful yet dangerous. "Yes, you're different," she said. "Not human different." Kael chuckled low, a sound that reverberated in her chest. "I prefer unique," he said, and extended a hand, not with menace, but with invitation. "Will you take it, Everly Quinn?" Her mind raced. She could imagine running, screaming, calling the police, but the door she had opened wasn't just a car door anymore. It was a portal, a choice. And as she stared into Kael's eyes, she realized something terrifyingly exhilarating. She wanted to know what lay beyond it. The rain intensified, drumming against the sleek black car like impatient applause. Everly's fingers hovered over his hand, torn between instinct and desire. Somewhere in the city, her wedding probably started without her, her fiancé probably wondering why she had vanished. And yet, here she was, trembling, heart racing, standing on the edge of a decision that could rewrite her entire life. Lark shouted again, a warning from the world she was about to leave behind. "Everly, don't!" Everly's gaze flicked between her friend and Kael. Then, almost in slow motion, she made a choice that would shatter her old life entirely. She placed her hand in Kael's. The world seemed to exhale. Kael smiled, a rare, genuine curve of lips that promised eternity, danger, and something far more complicated than either of them yet understood. "Good," he said. "Now let's begin." And as the car glided away into the rain-soaked city, Everly Quinn realized she had stepped into forever. Everly's senses reeled as the black sedan slid through the slick streets of Manhattan, the rain a soft percussion on the roof above her. Neon lights from storefronts and towering billboards reflected in the glossy black surface of the car, distorting the city into a dreamscape she didn't recognize. Her hand still tingled from the brief contact with Kael's, a warmth that seemed impossible to exist in a man who had just told her she was staying forever. She swallowed hard, adjusting her grip on her bouquet as she tried to steady her racing thoughts. Wedding, groom, family, Lark. All of it felt like it belonged to another life now, a fragile memory being erased in real time. Kael, sitting opposite her with an almost casual ease, didn't glance at her again. Not yet, but the way he leaned back, legs crossed, fingers lightly tapping the seat, suggested absolute control over everything in the car. In her. "Where are we going?" Everly finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kael's eyes flicked toward her, a glint of amusement in their dark depths. "Home," he said simply. "Or at least, a place you will come to call home." Everly frowned. "You mean, you live in Manhattan? You don't have some castle or no castles?" He interrupted smoothly, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's too theatrical. I prefer penthouses. Modern, accessible, practical. But yes, I live here. She swallowed, trying to process the normalcy layered beneath the strangeness. A vampire king living among humans in a city that never slept. How had she missed this detail? Had the universe really decided to throw her straight into an immortal underworld in the middle of her wedding day? The car slowed, gliding smoothly along an unmarked alleyway. The walls were lined with reflective glass and black steel, neon signs buzzing faintly in the distance. Kael's hand moved to a small panel by the wheel, and the sedan slid into a hidden underground garage that seemed to appear out of nowhere. "This is incredible," Everly murmured, her voice tinged with awe and fear. How does all this exist right under the city?" Kael shrugged, an elegant, casual gesture that somehow carried centuries of experience. "You'd be surprised what people don't notice when they're busy with their ordinary lives." Everly followed him out of the car, the heels of her shoes clicking against polished concrete. Even in her wet gown, she noticed the subtle elegance of Kael's movements, his confidence in every step. There was danger in him, yes, but also an order, a purpose that was magnetic and terrifying at once. The elevator that awaited them was sleek, modern, and silent. As they ascended, Everly's mind spun with questions. How many vampires lived hidden in this city? How long had Kael been here? And why her? Why now? Kael's gaze caught hers in the mirrored elevator walls, and she flinched slightly under the intensity. "You have questions," he observed. "Good. Curiosity is the first step to survival." "Survival," Everly echoed, her heart lurching. "You mean, I might not survive this?" Kael's lips curved faintly. "If you let fear control you, perhaps not. But I think you'll do fine. Humans are adaptable." The elevator doors slid open, revealing a penthouse that looked like a modern art gallery. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, the lights sparkling like a million tiny stars against the rainy night. The furniture was minimal, sleek, and luxurious, and subtle lighting made shadows dance along the walls. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was a home that felt alive. Everly's breath caught as she stepped inside. This is amazing." Kael moved ahead of her, glancing at the surrounding security panels and subtle monitors embedded in the walls. "It must be," he said simply. "I built it to suit my tastes. And now yours potentially. Mine," Everly whispered, unsure if he was teasing or serious. "Perhaps." His voice carried a weight, a hint of the centuries behind him. "You're not leaving anytime soon, Everly. So, you might as well be comfortable." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a short, nervous sound. "Comfortable, right? I'm kidnapped by a vampire king on my wedding day. And you want me to be comfortable?" Kael's dark eyes studied her, and for the first time, she noticed something in his expression, something softer, almost amused. "Kidnapped," he said. "You exaggerate. I gave you a choice. You accepted it." Everly's stomach churned. She remembered the moment she'd placed her hand in his, the fleeting surge of warmth that had made her heart stutter. And now, she realized she had no idea what she had really agreed to. As if reading her thoughts, Kael moved closer, his presence suffocatingly magnetic. "You are curious, frightened, intrigued all at once. Good. That is the beginning of understanding my world. You will need all of those emotions." Everly swallowed, trying to summon courage. "Your world is this? Vampires hiding in plain sight?" He nodded. "Yes. And no. There are layers. Many of my kind coexist with humans seamlessly. We influence, manipulate, and protect in ways you don't even notice. It's subtle, precise, powerful." Everly tried to imagine herself navigating such a life. Humans lived fast, chaotic, fleeting lives. Vampires, especially ones like Kael, lived in shadows, controlled power and longevity that dwarfed human lifespans. Could she even begin to understand it? Could she survive it? "Do you," she started, hesitating. "Do you ever get lonely?" Kael's eyes darkened, but only briefly. Then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. "Loneliness is a choice. Immortality is lonely by nature. But sometimes someone like you might change that." Her breath caught. Someone like her? Everly? She was ordinary, clumsy, late for her own wedding, overwhelmed by life. What could she possibly offer to a man like Kael? Kael's hand brushed against hers as he guided her through the penthouse, and she felt that same inexplicable warmth, that subtle pull that had haunted her since the car. There are rules, he said quietly. Rules for humans in my world. Rules for your safety. Rules? She repeated. Yes. You will eat, sleep, move differently. You must understand boundaries. My world has predators, rival factions, and dangers that do not exist in your world. It is not cruel. It is necessary. Everly's stomach twisted. She had imagined danger in novels, in movies. But nothing had prepared her for the feeling that the city she knew was just a fragile layer above a hidden world of power, politics, and predators. And she had just stepped into it, barefoot on ice without realizing it. She hesitated at the door to a private room, the soft light revealing a bed that looked impossibly inviting, luxurious, yet intimidating. Am I sleeping here? She asked, her voice small. Kael glanced at her, one eyebrow arched. For now. It's secure, safe. Tomorrow, we begin your orientation. Learn the rules, learn the city, learn me. And perhaps you will begin to understand why you are here. Everly's pulse pounded. Orientation. Learn him. Learn this world. Learn survival. And maybe learn herself. She shivered, partly from the cold, partly from the thrill, partly from the magnetic tension that seemed to hum between them. As she lay on the bed later, the city lights painting patterns across the ceiling, she realized she had no idea how to sleep. The sound of rain, the hum of the city, Kael's shadow moving silently across the penthouse. It was all hypnotic, terrifying, intoxicating. She thought of her wedding, of the life she had left behind, and felt a pang of loss so sharp it made her eyes water. And yet, she could not ignore the thrill, the strange, magnetic pull toward Kael. She did not trust him completely. She was frightened of him, but she was inexplicably drawn to him in a way that scared her more than any danger could. A soft knock at the door startled her. Kael's voice followed almost immediately. Lark is here. She will stay close for now. You will need her. Lark appeared in the doorway, eyes wide but loyal, clutching an umbrella that now seemed completely useless indoors. Everly, she whispered, her tone half scolding, half relieved. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Everly shook her head. No, I'm okay. Sort of. I don't even know what this is yet. Lark frowned, taking in the room, the city view, the subtle sense of power that Kael exuded from everywhere he occupied. This is insane. Welcome to my world, Kael said softly from the shadows, his presence as commanding as it had been in the car. And yes, it is. Everly's heart raced, caught between fear and fascination. She had stepped into a life she didn't understand, with a man she couldn't resist, in a city that had centuries of secrets. And somehow, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Somewhere deep in her chest, a question formed, a dangerous thought that wouldn't leave her mind. Could she survive this world? And could she survive him? And yet, the answer, terrifying as it was, excited her. As she watched Kael move silently across the penthouse, Everly wondered aloud, how far would you go to survive in a world that doesn't care about you? If you believe everyone deserves a chance to stand up against unfair power, comment, I stand for justice. Only those who accept being controlled blindly won't. The first morning in Kael's penthouse arrived with a city that refused to sleep, the sun a reluctant visitor through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everly lay awake, tangled in her lace gown from the previous night, staring at the pattern of shadows the skyscrapers cast on the polished floors. Her mind refused rest, not just because of the unfamiliarity of her surroundings, but because Kael's presence lingered like a pulse she couldn't ignore. Breakfast came silently, a tray of carefully arranged food she couldn't fully appreciate. Kael watched her from the couch across the room, his posture relaxed, yet the subtle tension in the room told her he was always alert, always calculating. You should eat, he said finally, voice low, calm, authoritative. You need energy. Your body is not accustomed to the pace of my world. Everly stared at the tray, hesitating. Energy for what? I didn't sign up for this, she muttered, half to herself, half to Kael. You did, he said simply, his eyes catching hers. When you enter my car. The truth of it struck her harder than she expected. She had thought she was making a mistake. She had thought she could walk away. But she hadn't. And now she was here, in a world that would demand more from her than any human experience had prepared her for. Lark, sitting nearby and fiddling nervously with her phone, glanced at her. Everly, are you okay? She whispered. Because I'm not sure okay is even a word that covers this situation. I'll survive, Everly said, trying to sound braver than she felt. She ate mechanically, her mind spinning with questions. How long had Kael been in this city? How many vampires like him existed beneath the surface? And most importantly, why had he chosen her? Kael's attention to her was intense, almost tangible, and she felt it pressing against her in waves she couldn't ignore. The world I live in, he said, is not as human life appears. There are those who would take advantage, those who would harm you simply for being here. Understanding that is your first lesson. Everly swallowed, her fingers tightening around the edge of the tray. And the second lesson? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. The second lesson, Kael said, leaning back, is that survival and trust are not the same. You must learn both quickly. They left the penthouse soon after breakfast, stepping into a city that had no idea it was home to shadows. Kael drove a sleek black car that moved through streets with a predatory grace. Everly's stomach knotted as she realized that, even in the daylight, the city seemed different through Kael's eyes, more layered, more alive, more dangerous. They arrived at a club that pulsed with music and neon lights, a place that would appear ordinary to humans, but held secrets only those like Kael could see. Inside, vampires mingled seamlessly with humans, some casually, some with subtle displays of power that made her skin prickle. Kael led her through the crowd effortlessly, his presence commanding respect and attention without effort. This, he said, his voice low in her ear, is one of my domains. Observe, learn, do not interfere unless I instruct you. Everly's eyes darted around. She noticed subtle signs, a flicker of fangs hidden behind a smile, eyes that lingered too long on certain patrons, movements too fluid to belong to humans. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from a mixture of fascination and attraction she couldn't name. Everly, Kael said suddenly, breaking her observation, do you understand why you're here? She shook her head. Partly. You've brought me here, yes. But why me? I'm just human, he finished for her, a faint smirk on his lips. Exactly. Ordinary, fragile, fleeting. And yet, that is precisely why you intrigue me. You have nothing, and yet you dared to walk into a world that eats the ordinary alive. That courage, he let the word linger. It's rare. Everly's pulse quickened. She had never considered herself brave. She had always thought of herself as clumsy, hesitant, overwhelmed by life. But Kael's words planted a seed of something dangerous. Confidence. Kael, she started, hesitating, are all vampires like this? He chuckled softly, a sound that resonated in her chest. No, most are careless, cruel, or indifferent. Some hide completely among humans. Few are like me. The moment was broken by a sudden commotion near the bar. A group of vampires had cornered a young human, their predatory intent clear. Everly froze, unsure whether to intervene. Kael's hand rested lightly on her back, and the pressure was grounding, almost protective. Observe, he whispered. Judgment first, action second. She watched as Kael moved, graceful and precise, positioning himself between the aggressors and the human. His presence was enough. The attackers backed off, their respect and fear palpable. Kael turned, his eyes meeting hers, and she realized the silent lesson. Power demanded restraint, not impulse. The encounter left her shaken, but also strangely exhilarated. This world was dangerous, yes, but it was also alive, thrilling, intoxicating. She had been brought here not just to survive, but to learn how to thrive. Later, as they returned to the penthouse, Everly's thoughts churned. She glanced at Kael, who seemed effortless, untouchable, and yet human in ways she couldn't fully understand. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked again, unable to resist the question. Kael's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "Lonely is a luxury for the living," he said. "But sometimes a human reminds you why you exist, even if you don't always understand it." Everly's chest tightened. Was he speaking of her? Could she, in her fragility, really matter to someone who had lived centuries? The days that followed were a whirlwind of lessons, exposure, and tension. Kael introduced her to his world piece by piece. The subtle politics, the hidden dangers, the factions vying for power, and the humans who unknowingly lived under their influence. Each lesson was a test, each encounter a challenge to her instincts. One evening, she stood on the balcony of the penthouse, watching the city glow beneath her. Lark joined her, arms crossed, eyes serious. "Everly, do you really think you can survive this? Kael's world isn't forgiving. It's ruthless. I have to try," Everly said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I didn't choose this life, but now that I'm here, I need to understand it. And I want to." Lark frowned, skeptical but supportive. "I just don't want to lose you, or see you hurt." Everly smiled softly, gratitude touching her heart. "I'll be careful. I have to be. But I'm not alone, Lark. Kael, he's different." And she realized, with a flutter of fear and excitement, that she meant it. Kael was dangerous, powerful, and intoxicating, but she was drawn to him in ways she didn't yet understand. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Kael entered, his presence commanding yet effortless. He carried a sleek tablet, scrolling through information. "You're progressing faster than expected," he said, eyes glinting. "But tomorrow, you'll face a test, one that will challenge more than your knowledge. It will challenge your courage." Everly's stomach twisted. A test? She had barely survived the first exposure to his world, and now more. Kael moved closer, lowering his voice. "Do not fear it, Everly. Fear is natural, but bravery that is earned." Her pulse raced as she nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She had entered this world by accident, but now she had a choice: fight, survive, and adapt, or retreat and lose herself completely. As the night deepened, Everly reflected on her journey so far. She had left a wedding, a life, a human world she barely recognized. In return, she had found a world that challenged her at every turn, a man who defied every expectation, and a sense of possibility she hadn't felt before. Somewhere deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Danger, intrigue, and desire were all entwined in Kael's world, and she had been thrust directly into the center of it. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was both terrifying and thrilling. Could she survive Kael's world, and could she survive him? Everly whispered to herself, "What would you risk to survive in a world that doesn't care about you?" If you believe everyone deserves a fair chance against power-hungry manipulators, comment, "I stand for justice." Only those who accept being controlled blindly won't. The city had changed since Everly Quinn stepped into Kael Duvall's world. The neon-lit streets that once felt chaotic now seemed layered with a strange rhythm she was learning to navigate. Every shadow might conceal danger. Every reflection in glass could hide a predator. She had learned rules, observed carefully, and tested her instincts, but nothing prepared her for the trial Kael had promised. The warning came softly, almost casually, as Kael approached her in the penthouse. "Tonight," he said, voice low, almost melodic, "you will face your first real test. One that will measure more than your courage. It will measure your choices." Everly's heart raced. She had trained with Kael's guidance, absorbed lessons on restraint, power, and observation, but she still felt like a fragile human against a predator's world. "What kind of test?" she asked, though part of her feared the answer. "You will see it for yourself," Kael said, his eyes glinting with that same unreadable intensity that both terrified and thrilled her. You may want to turn back, Everly, but I suggest you don't. Courage and trust are earned, not given. The car ride was silent, save for the hum of the engine gliding over wet asphalt. Everly clutched the strap of her bag, a mix of anxiety and anticipation twisting her stomach. She had no idea what awaited her, only that Kael had chosen to reveal it now, and retreat was no longer an option. They arrived at a discreet warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its steel doors grim and unwelcoming. Everly noticed movement inside. Figures circling, whispers like shadows in the corners, and the sense of tension hanging thick in the air. "This is where you'll learn," Kael murmured. "Observe, act, and remember, your life and others may depend on it." Everly's breath caught. The figures were vampires, some young, some older, their expressions sharp, predatory. She realized immediately that this was not a lesson in subtlety, but in survival, in understanding the stakes of Kael's world. Kael guided her to a corner, his presence a shield. "You do not interfere unless I give the signal. Watch carefully. Learn the subtleties. Every movement tells a story." She nodded, adrenaline surging. Her eyes followed the patterns, noting power dynamics, subtle threats, and the way authority shifted in moments of danger. It was overwhelming, yet mesmerizing. Kael's world was ruthless, precise, and utterly intoxicating. Suddenly, a challenge erupted. A rival faction of vampires entered, their intentions clear: control, intimidation, dominance. Everly froze, her pulse hammering in her chest. Kael's hand found hers, subtle and grounding, and she felt a surge of strength she didn't know she possessed. "You are ready," Kael whispered. "Trust yourself." The conflict escalated quickly. The rival faction attempted to corner one of Kael's allies, and Everly realized she had a choice: intervene or remain passive. Her instinct screamed at her, and she acted. She stepped forward, drawing on Kael's lessons: calm observation, precise action, measured courage. Using a combination of distractions, quick thinking, and subtle manipulation she had observed, she helped defuse the situation without direct confrontation. Kael's eyes never left her, and when the danger passed, he approached with a rare, approving smile. "Well done, Everly," he said. "You acted decisively, without panic, without hesitation. That is the mark of someone who can survive and thrive in my world." Everly exhaled, trembling, relief washing through her. I didn't think I could." "You did," Kael said simply. "And that is why you are here. You are not just a visitor, Everly Quinn. You are a part of this world now." The adrenaline slowly ebbed as they returned to the penthouse. Everly's hand still shook, but her chest felt lighter, empowered. She had faced danger and come out intact, proving herself in a world she never imagined. That night, Kael prepared a quiet dinner for the two of them. The penthouse felt different, less intimidating, more intimate. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond the windows, but here, in the warmth of Kael's presence, Everly felt something she hadn't expected: a sense of belonging. "You did well today," Kael said, his voice low, almost vulnerable. "I have watched many humans stumble, falter, fail. But you—" He paused, letting the words linger. "You are different. You see, you're not afraid to walk into the unknown." Everly's heart fluttered. "I didn't feel like I had a choice," she admitted softly. "It's not like I chose this world or you." "No," Kael said, moving closer, his gaze unwavering. "But you chose yourself. That is far rarer than you realize." She looked up at him, and the tension between them was palpable. The danger, the thrill, the unspoken promise of something forbidden yet enticing. All of it coalesced in a single moment. Everly's lips parted slightly, and Kael leaned forward, his hand brushing hers, the familiar warmth sparking through her. "Everly," he murmured, his voice a dangerous caress. "You have shown me more courage than I expected. And perhaps you have also shown me something I have long forgotten: connection, trust, desire." Her pulse raced, and she realized the truth she had been avoiding. She wanted him. The danger, the mystery, the intensity, it was intoxicating. She wanted to know him, Not just the vampire king, but the man beneath the centuries, the one who had been waiting for someone like her. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden alert from Kael's monitors. A warning of an intruder approaching the penthouse. His expression sharpened, and the tension returned, but Everly no longer felt helpless. She stood beside him, ready, alert, aware. Together, they faced the threat. Kael moved with supernatural speed and precision, and Everly, drawing on her newfound instincts, assisted in subtle but crucial ways. By the time the intruder was neutralized, they stood victorious, their bond strengthened by the shared experience. Kael looked at her then, a rare softness in his gaze. You have faced danger and survived. More than that, you have chosen to stay, to fight, to trust. Everly's breath caught. I didn't just survive. I wanted to stay. With you. Even if I'm terrified. Kael's lips curved into a smile, tender but commanding. Good. That is the beginning of everything. They stood together on the balcony afterward, the city sprawling below, rain-slick streets glittering like scattered stars. Everly leaned against him, the warmth of his presence grounding her. Kael, I don't understand everything about this world, she admitted, but I think I'm ready to learn. You will, he said softly, and I will be here. Always. Everly rested her head against his shoulder, heart racing, pulse steady, fear tempered by excitement. She had left a wedding, a human life, and a world that felt safe but confining. In return, she had found a life that was dangerous, intoxicating, and beautiful, and a man who made her feel alive in ways she never imagined. As the night deepened, Everly realized something profound. The wrong car on her wedding day had not been a mistake. It had been fate. A twist of a universe that had led her to Kael, to his world, and to a life she could never have predicted. And for the first time since she had left her human life behind, she felt certain of one thing. She had made the right choice. The rain continued to fall softly, tapping against the glass, a gentle reminder that the city was alive, ever-changing, and full of hidden possibilities. Everly smiled, finally feeling at peace. She was no longer just a bride who had made a mistake. She was a woman who had chosen courage, embraced danger, and discovered a love that promised forever. Kael's hand found hers again, the warmth familiar and steady. Forever, he whispered, echoing the words that had first terrified her in the car. Everly nodded, heart full. Forever, she repeated, not in fear this time, but in hope. And as they stood together, overlooking a city that held both shadows and light, she knew with certainty that her story was just beginning, and that whatever challenges awaited, she would face them with him by her side. Everly whispered, would you risk everything for a world that seems impossible to survive? If you believe everyone deserves a chance to fight against power-hungry manipulators and claim their own destiny, comment, I stand for justice. Only those who accept being controlled blindly won't. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. It really means a lot that you spent some time here with me today. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, drop a comment, or share it with someone who might enjoy it too. And don't forget to follow/subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I love hearing from you. So let me know your thoughts, questions, or just say hi in the comments. Thanks again. You're the reason I do this, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.